Here we go, yeah.
Here we go.
I'm going to have to fly solo, no microphone this morning. So, today we've managed to get hold of a very special guest for you, who is one of our past players, going all the way back to 1963. So, yeah, bloody hell.
What's your name, Lord George?
Well, you'll find out any minute now. So, he first came to St. Helens in '63, had a distinguished career, highlighting him playing at Wembley in 1966. So, can you put your hands together for Mr. Peter Harvey?
Come on, Pete, go faster than that, watch you.
Thanks, Peter. Do you want to take
Once upon a time, a long time ago, you were right.
take a seat, Peter?
Not now, though.
So, first of all, thanks for coming along today. Sorry about a lack of microphones. So, if we can just bear with us, please, on this one. So, first of all, going back to your start with St. Helens, you came to the club in 1963 from Liverpool Rugby Union, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually was I was saying to somebody earlier on, 1953 I was watching the Saints. I used to go to Knowsley Road and watch the Saints from being 13 years of age. So I was in the boys' pen, which doesn't exist anymore. Anybody else been in the boys' pen?
Yes.
The boys' pen?
Sixpence? Yes. Wow.
Sixpence to get in, right. You remember you walking past the change, you remember you used to walk past the changing rooms and try and see who was in there. Well, I did all of that. I watched as a schoolboy, and it was interesting that we had a mining programme on before, because my dad was a miner. And lots of other people's dads were miners. Mining was a very important part of our town. And one of the things which happened before I came to Saints as a player was that I actually managed to pass the scholarship. And passing the scholarship in those days meant that you either went to Cowley or West Park, depending on what your religion was at that time. And I was at the same time as Ray French. And Ray French and I have grown up together, and he remembers playing Cowboys and Indians round the back of the Big Eddington stand there when he was the same age as me. So we've known each other for a long while, and I'm mentioning that because as schoolboys we were all growing up together, all in the boys' pen, all being, friends and enemies at the same time. I was with Ray French when he was in the Lancashire Schools Rugby Union, I was in the Lancashire Schools Rugby Union. But I just mentioned the fact that the mining people was, when I got my green blazer and put it up on the wall, what my dad said was, that means he will never have to go down the pit. Now, it's very difficult for people to imagine the difference between working class and upper working class, or whatever you want to call it. There was a class structure which was going on then, which doesn't really exist today, not nearly to the same extent. So, yes, I came to Saints. Saints came to me first in 1958, before I went away to college. And they offered to sign me then, because 1959 I'd just played for England Schools. Now, I was the first boy from Lancashire to play for England Schools Rugby Union. My dad reckons that's the best thing I ever did, because I was the first of about 200 or 300 people who have now done it since then. But that was a gateway, that was an opening to people of St. Helens to actually go into rugby union. Therefore, I'm going back before your question, but I know that. But it was important because that meant that I was then an international schoolboy, even though it was at rugby union. I came through the ranks at rugby union. I finished up as a final England trial in 1961-62 when I was at Loughborough. I was at Loughborough College in those days, and I came back up here. My first job was actually at St. Bede's in Ormskirk, and I was head of the PE departments in St. Bede's department. And I was head of the PE department because my head teacher liked the idea that I was playing rugby union. I was offered 6 weeks leave of absence to go to Australia and New Zealand to play rugby union and get paid while I was there. When I signed rugby league, I asked for one afternoon off to play for Lancashire against Cumberland, and he said, no, you can't have it off. He said, you can't have it off because you're not allowed to have another job that competes with your teaching job. And that was the difference. In those days, we were only part-timers. My job was a teacher. My job has always been a teacher, but I've played rugby in between. Now, I've gone all the way back to your question.
Right.
So, by the time 1962 was over, I was still teaching in a secondary school. He wasn't happy with me because I was going to rugby league, and I went to rugby league. One last little bit. The reason I didn't get picked for the England side was that I came from St. Helens, and coming from St. Helens meant you might go to rugby league, and that was why I never became an international rugby union player. That's a long way round to say what happened to me before I ever got it.
Right.
Very interesting.
As you can see now, Peter, we've got a microphone which is better. So, you came to St. Helens, you signed for them in 63, and your first game was on the 24th of August against Huddersfield. What was it like playing in your first professional game?
My first professional game was a very important game, as you might gather, mainly because I was coming from rugby union and I hadn't actually signed. So if I'd have got injured that day, I'd have been cast out forever, because I was still a rugby union player, and it was the first time I was playing, and it was going to be in the newspapers on the Monday that I've been playing, and here he is, this rugby union player who's playing rugby league. So it was a big, very important game, because it meant that if I was not successful on that particular day, and I'd said this with Stan McCormick was the coach, and he said, look Peter, he said, there's no point in us playing you in the 18. He said, because you're not going to be an 18 player. He said, if you're going to be an 18 player, we won't sign you. You are going to be a first team player, so we're going to pick you in the first team. And that was my very first match of rugby league. Not just the first match for Saints, the very first time I ever played rugby league was in that first match against Huddersfield. As it happens, we won. Did we win? Yes, I think we won. Tom van Vollenhoven was playing, and Tom van Vollenhoven is a great player, possibly the greatest player of all time. Alex Murphy wasn't playing that particular day, because Alex never played the first game of the season, because his wife was a teacher and they went on holiday in August. So you didn't get Alex playing in August, and if you want to look it up, you'll see that that's true.
Well, if he's only everybody Blackpool, he could have come and played game.
Yeah, he could have nipped back, you know, left the Tower Ballroom and come back. But in your first season, Peter, I was doing a bit of reading up. You played the majority of the time on the wing, is that right? Because according to the book that you brought out, the Red Herd with fire in his boots, it sounds like he was quite a speed merchant. What was it like being on the wing? Because I believe he was actually playing with Tom van Vollenhoven as your centre at one point, is that right?
Yeah, but let's not talk about that particular game. We'll arrive at that game. When I came to Saints, they said to me, what position do you play? And I remembered meeting Don Gullick. Who remembers Don Gullick? Anybody in the room remember Don Gullick?
My teacher at school.
Your teacher? Quite a big guy. Don Bullock was a very big bloke. In those days anyway, for a centre he was huge. And I remember meeting him in a car park and saying hello, because I was a big fan, remember, and I said hello to him, and he shook hands with me and he said, hello Peter. This is before I ever got there. So when I was asked the question, what position do you play, I said standoff or wing. I didn't think that I was ever going to be a centre in rugby league. I was going to be a standoff or I was going to be a wing. Yes, I was quick enough to be a wingman, I was clever enough to be a standoff, but I sometimes played centre. So if you do look down the whole list, you'll find that I was what was called a utility back. They could use me wherever they liked. And in the first game against Australia we played, there was a very interesting thing happened that particular day, when our centre that day was a lad called Mooney, and I was playing on the wing, and Mooney fancied himself as a rough centre, and he went flying into this Australian second row forward, smacked him round the head, and then carried on until the next time that fella got the ball, when he smacked Mooney round the head and they carried him off. They carried him off, and we got a substitute came on. And we didn't have any substitutes, we'd never had substitutes, but the first substitutes in rugby league was that day when Saints played Australia in 1963. And you can look it up, because that lad came out of the crowd. He was a Saints player, but he wasn't prepared to play that day, and they brought him out and they played him on there. His name was Breers, and that was his last play. Was it Alan Breers, was it?
Alan Breers.
Alan Breers. His last match at Saints was as a substitute, and you can find him and ask him and he'll tell you he was brought out of the crowd. The Australians had agreed with the Rugby League that they could have substitutes, and if they could have substitutes, then we could have substitutes. But the fact was we'd never ever had a substitute, so we didn't pick substitutes. And the idea that you've got four fellas on the bench, all of them forwards, no backs ever get put on the bench. I don't know why, but don't get me going on that. So yes, it was a very interesting start for me when I played on the wing, and it was interesting to me because that first season I was top try scorer. I scored 23 tries that season, and Tom van Vollenhoven said, well, you're the star, you're the star man. So that was great coming from Tommy Vol. I didn't believe it, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah. So during your career, you scored a total of 48 tries, and you kicked 8 goals as well. So what I would say is a real utility type of player. But I noticed in that 1963 season, you actually got picked for Lancashire to play against Cumbria. That must have been an honour at the time. You've only just started in rugby league, and then all of a sudden you picked to play for Lancashire. What was that all like, Peter?
Well, it was good because Vinty Corellius was the captain of Lancashire, and that's the one and only time I played with Vinty Corellius. I mean, I admired Vinty Corellius as a fan, because Vinty was a superman. In his day, he was a superman. And to actually meet with him and be in the same team with him, it was up in Cumberland actually. That's the day that my boss wouldn't give me the day off, the half a day off. But I met him up there, and he was such a nice man. Corellius was such a nice man. Everybody talks about him being the wild bull of the Pampas, which he was. But what he was doing, which is what I learned a bit later on, he used to look after his own players. The forwards in those days looked after the backs. There's no doubt about that. They would. I can give you lots of examples of that. But Vinty Corellius was the one. If you recall, Alan Prescott playing a Test match with a broken arm. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Alan Prescott played a Test match against Australia in Australia with a broken arm. Do you know why? This is true. Eric Ashton told me this story. I said, I don't understand how Alan Prescott managed to play the whole match. And he said, well, you're forgetting Vinty Corellius. Did somebody speak at the back? No? He said, you're forgetting Vinci Corellius. And what had happened was at half time, the doctor said to Vinci, sorry, Alan, you've broken your arm, Alan. You can't go back on. They were already a man down, and this is in the days before substitutes. Bolton had broken his collarbone, so they were already down to 12 men. And Alan said, I'm not coming off. He said, I'm the captain of this side and I'm going to carry on playing. So how did he do it? When they came out in the second half, Vinci Corellius lined up all the Australians and he said, listen, he said, he's broken his arm. If any one of you put him in hospital, I promise I'll put you in hospital. And none of them ever did. Now, that is an absolutely true story.
There's no harm in that.
No harm in that, definitely. No harm in that. And from that, he didn't, Vinci, in that summer, I was still at school then, by the way, in that summer I became a hod carrier. And whose job was that looking after? Alan Prescott's.
That's amazing, that one. I can just imagine him saying, I'm going to kill you if you touch it. But if we move on a bit now to 1966, that was apparently the season of all seasons for you guys, and you had a starring role in a fantastic game at Wembley in 1966 when we defeated the old enemy that day, Wigan, 21 points to 2. What was it like, Peter, going out in front of, it must have been a massive crowd at Wembley at the time. If I go back to them early days, I think you were talking 90,000 people in Wembley Stadium at that time. What was it like playing in front of a massive crowd like that and to come away with the cup at the end of the day? It must have been an unbelievable experience.
You're right in everything you said. I want to emphasise one thing. The crowd was said to be 100,000. 100,000. It was the same summer as the England World Cup. And the England World Cup was not 100,000 spectators. That was a bigger match than the World Cup, which was the same season, right? It was a magnificent day. Alex Murphy was playing with us, Tommy Ball was playing with us, we had a great pack, Cliff Watson was playing with us. Cliff was my minder, by the way. Ray French was the man of the match for me. Ray French had a great day that day. He played second row and he had all the forwards running off him. Albert Halsall was playing, he was a new player, not many people knew him. Albert Halsall started as a centre, was very, very quick. And we had...
Was Dells that played second row as well then?
Sorry?
Dells. Walter Dells.
No, Walter Dells had finished, he was before me.
Wallow and Mantle, wasn't it?
It was Wallow and
Around
Mantle.
about that time, they knocked the crowd down for rugby league because there's bigger men than the football crowd.
Well, that was a bigger crowd than the football final.
Yeah.
And whenever people talk about spectator sport, I always support that because we don't get that now, really. If you watch the Wembley finals, you don't get 100,000 on, no matter who's playing. But it was a great day. But people had played before us, people like Alex Murphy, who was the club captain. Though if you watch it on the telly, you're not quite sure whether Ray French or Alex Murphy is the club captain. But Alex Murphy was definitely the club captain. Ray French looked after the forwards. Alex looked after all of us. But we'd learned from past experience because we knew that the game actually starts before the game. You've got to know going out. That walk down from the changing room, which straight you used to have to walk all the way onto the centre spot, as it were, before the game started. And the crowd was cheering, it was magnificent. But you had to stay calm, you had to stay solid. And we had Joe Cohn was then the coach. Stan McCormack had been fired for about the 4th or 5th time. He never could tell with Stan. He always said, they fired me 6 times at Saints. And these sort of things used to happen. But the match itself, we always knew we were going to win it. It's one of those magnificent feelings where you know you're going to win. We got a better pack than them. We had a better hooker than them. We actually had their ex-hooker, Billy Sayer, played for us. Remember Billy Sayer played for us? And everybody talks about Alex Murphy going offside. Everybody talks about us giving free kicks away. In those days, to play the ball, both players could stand up, put the ball on the floor, and both players could kick at the ball. That was legal. That was the way it played. There was none of this pushing it through your legs. You stood up and played it from in front of you, and the guy that was marking could kick the ball. Now, Alex Murphy was an expert at kicking the ball, right? And sometimes, yes, it went a bit hard and it went in somebody's face, and the referee didn't like that, and so we'd give a free kick. But the saying has always been that because we knew we would win the scrums, because Billy Sayer was the best hooker, and scrums were scrums in those days. In other words, the forwards were going in head first, bang bang, and there was a lot went on in the scrums in those days. It wasn't just a matter of throwing the ball through. But we had another, Alex was playing centre that day, wasn't he? Yes. Tommy Bishop had come to us as well. And Tommy Bishop was another sort of scrum half that knew he could play, knew he could get in and out and go quickly along. As standoff, my job was just to serve the people outside me. And yes, sometime halfway through the first half, I managed to get an opportunity to get a service inside ball to Vollenhoven. Vollenhoven came through and then gave it to John Mantle, and John Mantle dived over, and that was the try. But that game, I know this sounds really odd, but I knew there was 100,000 people on there. I saw them when we were walking out, then I blanked them. I didn't think they could think of the crowd at all till about 20 minutes from the end, when we were well up and we're going to win that game. And when you know you're going to win the game, then you can look round and find out, where's my missus? You know, she's here somewhere. Where's this person and that person? And you start looking round the ground. Now, you mustn't do that when it kicks off, but you can do it if you know you're going to win at the end. So that was the feeling. The feeling was magnificent. The bit that galls me really in the end was we weren't allowed to run round the ground with the cup. It wasn't allowed in those days. The fellas with hats on were saying get off, get off, get off. So we never actually got round to show the cup to our supporters, our wives and that. We never got round to that. So all this now, children on and all that none of that happened in our day. Unfortunately for me and Saints, at the evening ceremony, which was a lovely dinner, we didn't get used to get drunk in those days, honestly. We were not drinking team at all. We had a lovely dinner, we had our wives with us, it was a proper dinner, it was smashing, and we'd won, and everybody felt elevated, and the conversation was going round. And in that conversation that was going round, there were a couple of members of the board there, and I remember saying, well, gentlemen, I said, I am delighted to have won today. It was really the best experience I've ever had, but I'm giving you warning now that at the end of next season, I want to leave. I want to stop playing rugby because I'm a teacher and I'm trying to get going as a teacher. How many games did I play after that? No. Well, I played 4 games after that. And I scored 4 tries on the wing, scored 4 tries, and the next day I was reserve in the 18. And Basil Lowe, who was the secretary, said to me, he said, you will never play for the Saints again. Nobody retires on our books. And that was the end of my Saints career. I was kicked into the long grass. I played the odd game, 2 or 3 games before the Christmas time, and then I never played again. And that's why I was sent to Warrington. Basically, it had nothing to do with me, that. Ray French was sent to witness, that had nothing to do with him either. So in those days, you had no contract. The only contract that you had was that you were a Saints player. There was nothing back, you didn't get paid, you only got paid to play, so you were very much a semi-professional person, which that's the way it was, which is why everybody else has got either a mining job or whatever job that you happen to be in with. Mantle came, he was another teacher.
Yeah.
So we had a few teachers knocking about in the squad. Keith Norley was there, who remembers Keith? Keith, a great player, Keith. But then again, you see, they moved him on. So rugby in those days, rugby league in those days was semi-professional. It's changed.
That's utterly fascinating, that was, Peter. Really was. It's a lovely insight into going back in that time of day. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to ask Peter a question?
Yeah.
Go on.
When I was a butcher, I used to look after his dog, his mother's dog with bones.
My mother's dog,
Do you remember that?
my father's
When you
dog.
had shop at finger post.
Oh, when we had the shop at the finger post. Yes. Do you remember that?
To crossing that dog,
Do you,
sit at the crossing, look each way and then come across.
Right.
Same coming back.
our dog, he brought this up, not me. Our dog, we lived in High Park Street. Our dog used to walk across the zebra crossing.
Yeah?
Didn't just run across the road. It would stand and wait, and he'd walk across. Did he work in the co-op? He'd walk across there.
It's totally plenty of me sort of bone for it.
It's,
What sort of dog was that? It's
well,
intelligent.
it was a very intelligent dog. Came from a very
Wasn't a border collie. I know we've got one and I know what they're like. They're absolutely must for things like that. Anybody else? Before I ask one final question of Peter, because I'm conscious of his precious time and what
I
have
don't
you.
have precious time. I stayed forever, mate.
Well, you can have a little circulate around the tables after, because
Somebody's asking.
oh, sorry.
Who's your favourite player of today's game?
Favourite player of today, Peter? That's a good question.
Don't say anybody.
It's a very different game, right? It's a very, very, very different game. And I come regular. I've been commentating for the blind for the last 35 years. I come and watch a lot of the matches. I see lots and lots of things that go on. I'd like to see us quicker in the backs. I don't think our backs are really quick enough because we're using them as forwards. We're using them as forwards and we're not using them as backs. I think that this whole idea of 4 forwards on the bench. Can I ask a question? How many forwards were walking around that pitch on Friday night? All 6 of them were walking around the pitch at some stage or another. I find that unbelievable. But that, they knew that their backs, the 4 backs that were going to carry the ball out, would be carrying the ball out. You think Tommy Nivola would have been carrying the ball out? No, thank you. That would not have happened. You think Alex Murphy would have been carrying the ball out? No, thank you.
We've got 8 second row. What do you want 8 second row?
Possibly centres. But that's the problem. The problem is we're buying players who are second rows that might play centre.
We've only Walmsley and Prices, but we've no more big props. We've 8 second row men.
We've got a couple of nice props playing at the moment. They're nice ball handling players. I think we've got a couple of good players, not Walmsley, but a couple of good ball handling players, right? I think Dodd is a very, very good player, but if you give him a kicking rule that he's always the kicker, then he's always going to be behind all the players, and that's no good for him. He's got to be, sometimes he's got to be in the front where he can attack. You can't kick the ball and then be there to do the attacking.
I mean, in the old days, there was no reserves.
There were no reserves.
Yeah, play injured.
There were a couple of substitutes that
Even if you broke your leg, you had to go back on.
well, broke down we've already talked about. But I'd really like to see us play with real pace. Now, I'm going to swear in a minute. If you watch Wigan play, you watch how quick their centres are. You watch the way in which they can bring the ball on the inside as well as on the outside, and we don't do that. I think Lomax is probably my favourite player, if you ask about the favourite player, because he is the person who is controlling everything that's going on the pitch. He was the player who was controlling everything on the pitch, even when James Roby was playing. And I like James Roby very, very much indeed. I'd like to think that this lad that's come from Warrington, our number 9 that's come from Warrington, is going to be given the opportunity to actually express himself and play and run down the middle with somebody coming off him. I remember playing with Dick Huddards, not a lot, but I did play with Dick Huddards. And what I remember him saying, Dick Huddards used to be sometimes out in the centre, and he was having a minute, he was having a rest. He'd be out in the centre, but if Dick Huddards said to you, "Follow me this time," you knew that if you followed him, he was going to make a lovely hole for you, slip you the ball, and you would go straight through. I don't see that happening anymore. I don't see our forwards playing like that. Maybe this lad from Warrington might play like that. I don't know. I'm hoping he is. I don't like the idea that you've got 4 forwards on the bench and they're actually looking at the coach to say, "Can I come off now? Can I come off now?" And at the same time, they're walking around when the backs are carrying on with the ball. I shouldn't really say that.
They come off at wrong time. And don't go back on it right.
I watch a lot of matches. Unlike past players, I do actually watch a lot of matches. And I've been, as I say, doing commentary for the blind for a long time. I'm not now doing commentary for the blind because I can't keep up with all the new names that I've got to remember quick enough. I can do an inter-round summary, as it were, but I can't go up and down the steps anymore. So that's why I've got my stick with me there, that if I've got to go up and down steps, then I need a stick.
Right, Peter, one final question for you now, and we ask this of all our guests. If you could have dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, who would you be? So if you're going to go to dinner with 3 people on a table, who would they be?
Always a good question, this one.
I was lucky enough to go to South Africa, to Tommy Voll's last. I know what I'm saying, reunion. It wasn't really a reunion, but there were 3 of us went: Abe Terry, me, and Dave Markey. We went to Tommy Voll, and we had a very nice time with Tommy and his wife. And he died 2 weeks later. Now, that was a huge hit for me, but I would have Tommy Voll, I would have Cliff Watson, because Cliff was my minder. The first time I played over in Yorkshire, I was playing standoff, and I got laid out 3 times. 3 times flat out on the floor. And Cliff Watson came over to Wilfie Smith, and he said to Wilf, "What's going on here?" And Wilfie said, "That standoff's hitting him after the ball's gone." Because I was a rugby union player and I used to pass the ball, and nobody ever hit your head in rugby union. They do it in rugby league. Boof, 3 times. Cliff's just said, "Okay, leave it to me." And he pushed out in the next scrum. Cliff went from tight head to open side. He came out, hit the standoff, picked him up, shook him like a rag doll, bounced him on the floor, and then turned around and said, "Are you all right now, Peter?" And I thought, thank you very much. And that's what the forwards should be doing, looking after the backs. So I'd have Cliff Watson. Who would I? Alex Murphy's a great player. But I don't know that we get on that well. We do, but you know what I mean. I'm saying. So I'm looking for the 3rd person who would really. I'd really like to go. I've never met him.
Yeah.
Really, Sean Long. Sean Long was a great player of his own time. If you watch him, it was a strange time. I think the 90s was a very strange time for our players. But Sean Long was a great player, and if you noticed the wide to west try, then Sean Long's involved in that, like from the very beginning of that, with the kick and the carry on and the going back. So I'd be interested in talking with him and finding out, more from him. Difficult question, that one.
Did you play on the coin?
Yeah, he played.
Coin, the fitness.
Yeah, it's 66.
Did you play under him?
Yeah. Can I talk just a wee bit about Joe Cohen? Because I'm going to answer another question that he asked. We were known as the team that won the 4 cups in '66. We also won the 3 cups in '65. We got beaten in the final against Halifax, and we got beaten in the final against Halifax because Tom Van Vollenhoven played centre. Tom Van Vollenhoven played centre to me. Now, if you'd have switched those positions, I think we might very well have won. Because Tommy, he didn't play centre, he was a wingman, right? But unfortunately, that was just about the time that McCormick was going out and Joe Cohen was coming in. And otherwise, we would have won 8 out of 8. We won 7 out of 8. It was a great side. But what Joe Cohen brought to rugby league was fitness. He was a Carnegie man. He was a Carnegie lecturer, not Carnegie lecturer, a Carnegie person. He was actually a swimmer. Joe Cohen didn't play rugby, he was a swimmer. But he was very, very good at training people, at fitness training. We were fitter than any other side, and we knew that we were fitter than any other side, and we knew that we would win any game if we were anywhere close 10 minutes from the end. And people will say, oh, Saints used to score lucky tries at the end of games. No, they didn't. They were still playing when the other side were flat out, as it were. So yes, I did play under Joe Cohen.
Oh, you did, yeah.
And I played under Stan McCormick. He was there when I started, and Joe Cohen when I finished. Well, you've been very attentive to us, that's for sure.
Stan come from Belgium.
Yes, you did, yes. He tells the tale that it was either him or the Lion, and the Lion was there every day getting seen, and he was only playing once a week. So that's why he came to Saints. That's Stan McCormick for you. Okay, I've stood up because I find it difficult to get up and down.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Pete Harvey. What a talk. Thank you.